Hi, I'm Dr. Gerald Deas. Welcome to Health Center from Downstate Medical Center. Today we're going to look back in years of development, achievements, and all the things that make a place historical. And that's Downstate Medical Center. 150 years. Can you imagine all of that time? And when I think about it sometime, I've been here since 1958. I've been here for almost 54 years of that time. So at least I have 1/3 of the time. But there's another 100 years that were way before me. And guess who I'm going to talk to today? You know, Margaret Mead made a statement, and she said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." Margaret Mead. When I came here to Downstate Medical Center, our motto was, "Let each become all he's capable of being." That hit me right in my forehead when I entered school. Become all you're capable of being. And here on Clarkson Avenue, this place has proven to be all they are capable of being and continue to be. And so today we're going to go back a little bit in history, how it all came about, and why we're celebrating this 150 years, who made it possible, and who have achieved here. So many have come and gone, and many have seen the Maker, and others are waiting to see the Maker, but we're still here, still achieving, growing, and achieving. So I want to welcome two guests here today who have made this possible, and we'll discuss Downstate Medical Center. I want to welcome you, Dr. Selwyn, Martin Selwyn, class of
57.
57, Dr. Selwyn, 57. I'm going to get back to you in a minute. And Dr. John Sheila Rosa, our president here at the present time, been here for at least 10 years or over now, going for his 20. But anyhow, we're going to start with a little bit of history. And Dr. Selwyn, you came here in 1957.
Graduated in
1957. Right.
Graduated college in 1953.
Right.
And then came here directly from S.U.N.Y.
And you know one other thing you forgot? We went to Boys High together.
That's right. Boys High.
Boys High School. So we were right along there with our principal,
Yeah,
Dr.
a lot of years.
A lot of years. But it was a great school, wasn't it?
A lot of wonderful opportunities.
I think it almost made us educated enough to get into Downstate. Do you think so?
I agree.
Right.
It was the high point of my education, Boys High.
Right.
And it's so sad that the school is no longer there.
Well, it's just moved.
They changed it.
No, it's at Boys and Girls High School.
Yeah. No longer the same school.
Right. Well, that's because I guess they removed the women. We were able to concentrate more.
Yes.
But Dr. Selwyn, maybe just a little history now about yourself here at Downstate Medical Center. How did all of this achievement that we want to talk about today, how did it all come about? How did you think you would like to present Downstate Medical Center?
Well, 2010 was the sesquicentennial of the College of Medicine, and it seemed to me a wonderful opportunity to put together the image of this extraordinary medical school, Downstate, and it was an opportunity not to be missed. Mm-hmm. And I approached Dr. La Rosa a couple of years before the sesquicentennial, and he enthusiastically urged me on and offered some of the resources of Downstate that were essential to accomplish what I had in mind. And the idea was to do a history of Downstate with a human face.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. That's almost like Facebook.
Is that right? Well, we had so many outstanding alumni and faculty, so many people who'd passed through the halls of Downstate and done significant, creative, extraordinary work in this humble school in the middle of Brooklyn. And it seemed as though the story of their achievements had to be told. And after some thinking, I decided to recruit a lot of essayists, and I recruited 11 dozen. to write the bios, these monographs, which I in turn edited. And first we started with the idea that I'd put together about 30 bios, and that seemed totally inadequate. And then I raised it to 50, and then 100, and finally settled on 150, which far from complete. It doesn't cover all of the people who've been at Downstate and accomplished so much, but there had to be some limit, and I leave room for the successor, the next person who decides to do a history of Downstate based on the women or some other dimension of the people who've worked here. In any event, the largest effort was recruiting the essayists, the biographers. Part of our problem at Downstate is we lack the resource. There's no history of the people who've been here. I think of it as the Downstate eraser. When people leave here, they're wiped out. And so there were others that I wanted to include in the book, but couldn't because we had no historical record or were unable to recruit someone to write the bio of that person. And so after a good bit of struggling for more than a year, we finally accomplished a collection of essayists, and then spent a good bit of time. Of course, all of these were busy people, and it was a competition for their priorities and their time. And finally, we're able to obtain the monographs for 150 people. And actually, there are some of the monographs that deal with 2 people, so the total is 153 that we present in the book. And there are many others mentioned in some of the essays, dozens more. And that's the story of the book.
Well, Dr. LaRosa, when Dr. Sullivan came to you and asked you about this project, now you had a lot of projects on your desk that come across there all the time. And you had to be very selective, otherwise it would be nothing but a library full of our books and accomplishments here. What did you feel when Dr. Sullivan came by and told you of this tremendous accomplishment or things that he wanted to do?
Well, first of all, we could fill a library with all of the books and papers and so forth that have been written. And that's one of the points, I think, of this book. And I thought it was a very unique and interesting way to tell the history of an institution. Institutions are fundamentally not about bricks and mortar. That's not what makes a place. What makes a place are the people who pass through it. And what Dr. Selwyn's ingenious idea was to rather than to write a linear history of Downstate, which is interesting enough, which has been done before, probably always could be done better, but what his approach was to take the personalities that have been here, and those particularly that have made substantial contributions to the medical literature or to medical history in one way or another, of which there are a great many.
Yes.
And pick 150 or so of them. There probably are another 150 that could have been put into this book. And have someone in their field write a history of their contributions.
Surely.
I think it makes for very interesting reading because you're reading about real people.
That's true.
Who have done extraordinary things. And I think it says a lot more, frankly, about the history of this institution and the importance of this institution than a history of who became the president or who became chairman of a department or who was fighting with whom. These institutions are about people and about the people who contribute to them and about the many people who've contributed well beyond the institution. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Deas, since I know you're too modest to say it, you were one of those people, and you're one of those people in the book. And I think the institution is really, the institutional history of the place is really about the people of the place.
Right.
And so I find this to be a unique contribution, and one, you can read one chapter, you can pick it up at random and read the middle chapter in the book, or you can read the first chapter and the last chapter, anywhere you want to be. And it's a contained story of somebody who did extraordinary things.
Right. You know, I recall when I was in school here, Dr. Furchgott was my physiology and biochemistry teacher, and never did he think, or maybe thought at that time, or that he would get the Nobel Prize, for example. And then when I looked at him as we became physicians together here in school and so forth, I said to him one time when we had our graduation, we had little cards on each place setting, and on his place setting we put, "If you're so smart, why ain't you rich?" So he saw me in the hall one day after he got the Nobel Prize. He says, "Now I'm rich." Yeah. But I'm just saying, I'm just lifting up that particular person. But maybe Dr. Selwyn, what crosses your mind, somebody that you had contact with here, worked with as a student maybe, or someone in the school that came back and taught here? Is there any one person, or I'm sure it's many, but that you would like to bring up?
Well, there were so many.
Yeah.
Jean Oliver in pathology was such an outstanding scholar.
Yes.
And tremendous influence. And I decided on pathology in part because of his approach and his interest, his scholarship, and his creativity. The list is very long for me of people I had as good friends and major influences. Stanley Aronson, a neuropathologist.
Wonderful.
Who I continue to correspond with all the years he's been at Brown.
Yes. Yes.
He's a brilliant scholar and a wonderful person. Bob Austrian, infectious disease,
yes,
and pneumococcus.
You know, I can think, well, I went to school with Eli Friedman. We went to Brooklyn College together. I went to high school with you in Brooklyn College with Eli Friedman, who did magnificent work in renal physiology as well as dialysis and things like this.
Eli was a classmate of mine.
All right.
Same class of '57.
Okay.
And even as an undergraduate, he was an effective leader and a significant scholar.
Yes.
Chandler Brooks.
And I think that's the point, really. Excuse me for interrupting you. You referred to Downstate as a humble institution. And I think it's important also to remember that this humble institution ranks number 9 in the number of alumni who currently are professors in other medical schools in the United States. Out of 140 medical schools, number 9. And I think what Downstate has always been has reflected Brooklyn's fate. All the people who've come through here have in very large numbers been local residents who were very bright and might not have had the opportunity to go to one of the great New York schools across the river, but who came here and went on to do great things. And both of you are examples of that. And I think that's a very important, we've always, I'm sure always, even when it was Long Island College Hospital, had money problems and not the same level of external prestige. But the people that we've put out have been absolutely outstanding. And the faculty that taught here, many of whom were graduates here, many of whom were from the rest of the country, have been outstanding and continue to be.
Well, I know Dr. Clarence Dennis, for example, who's done so much in cardiac physiology. Actually, he was a teacher and also a friend. I mean, I could stop in the hall, go on rounds with him, and he taught me so many things. And one thing he taught me that just stands out, that helped me so much in practice of medicine late at night. He said, if you have a patient that comes in with abdominal pain, if it's really serious, ask them, are they hungry? And if you say, well, I'm hungry, but this pain is just too much, you know. He said, if they say they're hungry, less chance they'll have something that's leaking, like an appendix or a diverticulum and so forth. So many times in my practice, late at night, and somebody called up, last patient, abdominal pain. If they said they were hungry, I'd call my surgeon. I said, we have a patient in the waiting room, and more than likely, he had a gangrenous appendix or something going on. It's really interesting how these things of teaching really stick all your mind all these years, you know.
Yeah.
These little things, but big things that save lives.
Well, that was one of the extraordinary strengths of our medical education. We had clinical depth.
Yes, yes.
And managing diabetic ketoacidosis
Sure.
or an acute abdominal situation was something we became quite seasoned to during the course of medical school.
Yes.
In residency, I had anxieties when I went off to residency. I went to New Haven for a year of medicine before my pathology training, and I was anxious. These guys from Yale and Hopkins were going to be very, very well trained and knowledgeable, and it was not the case.
Right.
I was on a par. I'd been well trained and effectively prepared for a career in medicine. And the beneficiary of talents, wonderful talents, Dr. Doc.
Oh, William Doc.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. One of the best cardiologists around.
Louis Hellman, Brian
Yes.
Hoffman. The
OBGYN.
list is just extraordinary of all of these people who we rubbed up against and benefited from and learned from.
Oh, yeah.
And some became friends,
Right.
but most were mentors and teachers. And it's one of the things I put in the book, that in the end we will conserve only what we love, we will love only what we understand, we understand only what we're taught.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I know, Dr. Rosa, now you've been here a shorter period of time, not the whole 150 years, although you might feel it sometime.
There are days, yes.
But the achievements that you have seen through your legacy here or your time here, maybe you could expound a little bit on how you are taking this to the next level, or what you've been doing.
Well, I don't think I take it to the next level. I think the people who work here on the faculty now take it to the next level. And there's a lot of very vibrant research going on here today, ranging from studies on artificial limbs to studies on memory to research in the risk factors for heart disease and proteins affecting cancer expression. And like all academic medical centers, research, real research in laboratories and clinical research in clinics and hospitals is a very important part of what we do. And my job as president is not to do the research, it's to try to create the atmosphere where researchers feel comfortable and where they have the opportunities to take their ideas to the next level.
Right.
And we are a very active research organization, and always have been. There are very great many medical schools in the United States that have never had a Nobel Prize. And to have a Nobel Prize the way Bob Furchgott got it, and in an area where his work allowed us to understand the way blood vessel disease progresses, and the way blood vessels normally act or don't act, and how those things lead to health and disease is very, very critical. And there are lots of very fine scientists who never win the Nobel Prize, and we've got more than our share today and always. When I was an intern back many, many years ago, my partner as an intern we were both at the Peter Bent Brigham, which was a Harvard teaching hospital, but my partner was a graduate of Downstate. And he was clearly the best prepared of all of the people in our internship group, including people from Yale, and half of the internship group were Harvard graduates. Right. And he was the go-to guy. He was the guy who knew his way around a hospital. Mm-hmm. And it was because of the kind of training that he got here at Downstate.
Yes. And Dr. Salvard, you're still here teaching?
Yes.
And what makes you want to continue to teach? And you know, as we get older, and we're both in the same age group, you know, you wonder, as we carry our shopping bags across the campus, looking like women cleaning something or something. So I see you with your bags and you see with my bags, and we balance out our bags, heavy sometimes. What is your urge right now to continue in what you're doing? I mean,
joy.
Okay.
We're blessed with, for the most part, a very bright student population. Mm-hmm. And they're raw material for the most part. Mm. And it's our opportunity to instruct them, to educate them, and to introduce them to medicine and to medical science. In addition to my regular course teaching, I teach 2 electives, one for the second year and one for seniors. And it's enormously enjoyable.
That's great.
And I can think of little else that would be the way to spend my time.
That's wonderful. And Dr. LaRosa, you know, here we are now sitting here on Clarkson Avenue, but we started someplace else. Maybe you give us a little history of what's going to be happening right now with us in the new Downstate Medical Center.
Well, I think in many ways it's the old Downstate Medical Center. We started at the Long Island College Hospital, which was the first place. We were not called Downstate then. Long Island College Hospital, Long Island College of Medicine was the name of our institution. When the state took it over, it became Downstate and moved just a few years later here to Central Brooklyn, actually to provide the teaching faculty for Kings County Hospital, which is still the case. We still have a very close relationship with County Hospital. We now have our own university hospital as well. But very recently, last May, we re-merged with Long Island College Hospital, which is now part of our teaching, fully owned by the state of New York now, and part of our teaching program. It's actually always been part of our teaching program and always been a very popular place for students. And we now have 3 major institutions in Brooklyn, an outpatient facility, an ambulatory facility at the old Victory Memorial Hospital in Bay Ridge, right. Our own campus here in Central Brooklyn, and Long Island College Hospital. I think the reason we are doing that is because we need extra space for teaching. Right. And you know, you talk about our sort of our worldview, but 50% of our students come from Brooklyn. And if you look at all of the schools here, and virtually 99%, very, very high percentage, come from New York State, most from New York City or the New York City environs. We train 1 out of every 3 physicians who practices in Brooklyn, and 1 out of every 9 physicians who practices in New York City. So we're the single largest producer of physicians who actually practice in New York City, of any medical school in the state.
Well, that's a real history. So, Dr. Salvard, it's so good having you here to give us a history here. And Dr. Furchgott.
I haven't won my Nobel Prize yet.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Dr. Deas.
Thank you very much, Dr. Deas.
So you folks out there, You see what achievement has brought here on Clarkson Avenue here at Downstate Medical Center, and we certainly hope we can continue to grow and achieve. We'll see you next time.